Okay, beside internal consistency reliability and test-retest reliability, we can also explore the suitability to establish alternate forms reliability. Okay, so here, when we will not be able to establish internal consistency reliability or retest reliability, we can also use alternate form reliability. But of course, there are conditions to that. We want it, which will allow us to establish this type of reliability. So alternate form reliability allow us to establish coefficients of equivalence. Okay, coefficients of equivalence. If you recall, for test retest, we establish coefficients of stability. For alternate form, we want to establish coefficients of equivalence. So what coefficient of equivalence give us? It allow us to measure the degrees of the relationships between various forms. Okay, various forms of a test by means of alternate forms or parallel forms. Okay, for internal consistency reliability, we only need to have one form of the test. Okay, we don't have to have multiple forms. So we collect data only once to a group of people. Okay, once only and to one group of people, and we don't have many forms. We only have one form. Okay, that's why some people consider internal consistency reliability as the easiest way that we can estimate the reliability of our measures. But for alternate forms reliability, okay, we have to have at least two forms. Okay, some people call it as form 1, some people call it as form A and form B, form 1 and form 2, or form SF and form AF, for examples. Okay, so there are different forms. Okay, there are multiple forms. But both of these forms measure the same thing. Okay, measure the same things. So in this case, for test-retest reliability, you only have one form, but you administer or you collect data twice. But for coefficients of equivalence, for alternate form reliability, you have two forms, you collect data only once. Okay, it's the other way of test-retest reliability. Okay, most of researchers, okay, they do not differentiate between alternate form and parallel form. Okay, but Cohen et al. 2022, the textbook that we refer, for examples, they differentiate between parallel forms and alternate forms. Okay, remember, in order for us to establish alternate form reliability, we must have another forms beside the original one. Okay, so we can use either or. So Cohen differentiate between alternate forms and parallel forms. So what is parallel forms? Parallel forms under parallel form, for each form of the test, okay, we have two forms. The means and the variances of the observed test scores are equal. Okay, the mean and the variances of the observed test scores are equals, meaning that they have the same answer formats, and if they total up the number of the items, okay, the total score will be the same, the mean will be the same, okay, the variance will be the same. For alternate forms, okay, this is basically designed to be equivalent with respect to variables such as content and level of difficulty. But here they do not mention whether they should have the same range of formats or not, or they have the same number of items or not. Okay, for parallel forms, yes. So in practice, later or maybe you have learned about test developments. Okay, Cohen, for example, suggested that when we want to develop a new skills, okay, we are recommended to generate more items. If you put a target that for your new test you want to have 20 items, so researchers suggested that you to generate triple the number or at least double the number. If you aim for 20 items, so you need to generate, for example, 60 items or at least 40 items. Okay. Say, for example, you generate these 60 items after you've gone through all of the process to make sure that the items has content validity and have a quality property, then you may have, for example, 40 items. But remember, your aim to only have 20 items. So the remaining 20 items, you can create the parallel forms for those tests. So here you have form A and you have form B. But all items in those two forms measure the same construct. Okay, so why we need to have alternate form or parallel forms? Because in this case, sometimes it's very difficult for us to conduct test retest reliability. Okay, because you have to approach the same group of people again after 2 weeks, after 3 weeks, or after 6 weeks. And sometimes the dropout rates are very high. The first time you collect data, you got 30 people. The second time, only 15 people are available to give you the data. So in this case, you will not be able to establish the test retest reliability because you don't have enough numbers of respondents. So alternate form gives an advantage. So obtaining estimates of alternate form reliability or parallel forms reliability is similar to obtaining an estimate of test retest reliability. Okay, similar in what sense? Similar only on the calculations of correlations. But it is different because we only collect data once, okay, by using two forms. Okay, for test retest reliability, we collect data twice only using one form. Okay, administering two forms of a test to the same group. Okay, so same group of people. So scores may be affected by error related to the state of test takers, such as fatigue, etc., or item sampling. So in this case, we have to make sure that we minimize. Okay, we minimize the source of error, the one that we have learned in the previous part. Okay. For alternate form reliability, they of course have advantages and disadvantages as compared to internal consistency and test retest reliability. So in order for us to use alternate form reliability, you have to know that we have to administer two forms. Okay, and sometimes developing alternate forms or parallel forms requires a lot of effort and resources. Okay, whether it's time consuming or require a lot of financial resources. And most of test developers, they are unable to do that. So, but the advantage of using alternate form reliability, they are best to minimize training effects, okay, or practice effects. So remember, for test retest reliability, when you administer the second test too close, okay, to the first administration, so our respondents might have practice or training effects. And by using alternate form, remember we have only to administer it once, not twice. So here is time efficient as compared to test retest reliability. And obviously, using multiple test versions such as standardized ability or intelligent test, this would also enhance the validity of the test. So here we prevent, because of the training and practice effects, we prevent our respondents to be familiar with our test. So they can remember or they can recall what their answers in the first administration. Okay, and this is also allow us to conduct a large scale of assessment because we have multiple tests and because it only require one time administration rather than two or